Welcome to another exciting winter reading event. My name is Rachel. I'm the Adult Outreach and Event Coordinator for the Greenville County Library System. Now, if you haven't already signed up to participate in our Winter Reading Challenge, it's not too late. Go to greenvillelibrary.org/winter reading to get started on your challenge. You only have to complete 5 activities or books in a row on this handy dandy bingo card. And one of the spaces is a free space, so it's a bonus. And tonight's event fulfills one of the squares, attend a virtual Meet the Author event. So you can go ahead and tick that off. And of course, if you fulfill the row or even the whole card, if you want to really challenge yourself, then you'll be well on your way to earn a limited edition winter reading mug to drink out of on these cold winter nights, and a voucher for free pastry from Swamp Rabbit Cafe and Grocery. Plus, you'll be entered into our grand prize drawings for a Kindle Paperwhite, as well as free tickets to a reading appreciation game with the Swamp Rabbits hockey team. So those are some exciting prizes you can look forward to. Now, if this is your first time using Zoom, be sure to familiarize yourself with all the buttons. There's a mute button in the bottom left of the screen. You'll want to stay muted while our wonderful author is speaking, and then you should feel free to please unmute yourself during Q&A at the end. That way you can ask your questions directly to her. If you're camera shy, you can also use the chat feature in the Zoom to ask questions, and the chat button's more towards the middle bottom of your screen. We've got another staff member moderating the chat as well. And so the two of us will be able to handle any of your questions. If you have a technical issue or library related questions throughout the evening, just be sure to ask either one of us. This is the second in our series of Meet the Author events, which you probably saw on some of the slides when you entered the meeting. Check out all of the other events either through our local Author Expo page or by checking out our virtual calendar. I'll put all the links for that in the chat. We are also so thankful to the Friends of the Library, that's the Friends of the Greenville County Library System, as well as the EMRIS group. They have been generously sponsoring all of our special local author events. Now, I'm so pleased to welcome you to tonight's Meet the Author talk with celebrated local author Deb Richardson Moore. So Deb is the author of 4 fiction titles and a memoir, The Weight of Mercy, about her early years as a pastor at Triune Mercy Center in Greenville. A former national award-winning reporter for the Greenville News, Deb is a popular speaker at book clubs, universities, churches, and libraries. She has won numerous awards for community involvement, including the 2017 Leadership Greenville Distinguished Alumni Award, and being named one of Greenville's 50 most influential people by Greenville Business Magazine in 2013. A graduate of Wake Forest University, Deb and her husband live in Greenville. And for more information about the work of Deb, visit her website, that's debrichardsonmoore.com. I'll put that in the chat as well. So Deb, I hand the floor over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Rachel. And thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. I will not spend an entire hour speaking, so please jot down your questions and we'll have plenty of time for that at the end. After preaching for 15 years, I learned how to do an 18-minute sermon, so it's not going to happen for an hour. I am speaking to you tonight from Key West, where I'm staying in the lovely guest home of my writing friend, Paulette Alden. It's been 77 degrees and sunny here all day, so please don't hate me. But I understand it's not been that bad in Greenville either. So thanks so much to Rachel and the Greenville County Library and EMRIS for having me tonight. I've got a stack of 10 library books back in the bedroom with me because I am a reading machine on vacations. It was actually a lifetime of vacations that are behind my 5th book, Murder Forgotten. Let me see, here it is. If you haven't seen it yet, this is it. It's got this great creepy old beach house in it. Well, I grew up in Greenville. So naturally, my family vacationed at Litchfield, Garden City, Surfside, Cherry Grove, Ocean Drive, Edisto, Kiowa, and eventually Isle of Palms. And I was always fascinated by the people who lived at the beach. What must that be like? More specifically, what would it be like to be a writer living at the beach, spending every morning with a cup of coffee overlooking the Atlantic as you wrote, spending every evening with a glass of wine overlooking the Atlantic as you took a reward for your work? I have to admit, that sounded like heaven to me. If you've read my previous books, you know there are beach scenes in all of them, except one, I think. In The Weight of Mercy, a memoir about my early years as pastor of the Triune Mercy Center, I included a chapter about my son's graduation from the College of Charleston and staying at the Isle of Palms as we celebrated that week. In my series of Brannigan Powers mysteries, Brannigan lives in Northeast Georgia, and that farming rural landscape is very important to those stories. But her parents own a house at the Isle of Palms, and she often goes there as she's trying to solve those murders back home in Georgia. Well, when it came time to write my 5th book, I decided I wanted to take a break from Brannigan and write a standalone mystery, something darker, something more twisted. Maybe something about an aging mystery writer who lives at the beach. And maybe she's starting to have memory issues, which of course would threaten her ability to write. And quite literally, that was as far as I was in early 2018. Oh, what beach? What beach? Well, when you go to the Isle of Palms, you naturally go over to Sullivan's Island. The two are separated only by an inlet and connected by a bridge. Sullivan's Island always struck me as a true community of people who just happen to live at the beach. There are a lot of mansions for sure, and some rentals, but there are also a lot of regular houses where full-time residents live. So, okay, a standalone murder mystery about a writer who lives on Sullivan's Island. Then a member of my writers group in Greenville, Susan Clary Simmons, who many of you probably know from her work on the Greenville News and the Greenville Journal, said we needed to go to a writing conference. Since both of us were writing murder mysteries, we chose Killer Nashville. Well, that's exactly what it sounds like. The conference was scheduled for August of 2018, and it was quite expensive by the time you figured in hotel and meals and all those sessions. Well, to get the most out of the conference, you needed to submit 50 pages for critique by June. Susan had 50 pages. I had one sentence. An aging mystery writer who lives at the beach is losing her memory. I felt I needed more. Coincidentally, I had signed up for a statewide conference for nonprofits in Hilton Head that March. I almost never went to those things, maybe 3 the whole 15 years I was at Triune. But when I got to my hotel room at Hilton Head, I saw that I had a balcony with a view of the Atlantic Ocean. And all of a sudden, I wanted to write that story of Juliana Burke, a famous mystery writer who lived in a creaky old family home on Sullivan's Island. But if she was losing her memory, could she continue to write those amazing stories? Now, I'm ashamed to admit this, but I skipped most of the sessions in that conference on Hilton Head. Instead, I pulled up a table to the balcony overlooking the Atlantic, and I wrote. I would sneak down to the conference room for bagels and sandwiches and coffee and pretend I was walking into a session, and then I'd double back and catch the elevator up to my room. I was shameless, but on fire. I left Hilton Head with 25 pages. What emerged in those pages was that Juliana had something of a secret weapon, what her family called her wanderings. And they were episodes when she was so deep into a book that she went into almost a fugue state. She'd wake up on the beach or in a church cemetery or on Charleston's Battery with no memory of how she got there. But when she emerged, she would be energized with all of these ideas for her latest plot. Well, as I was writing her story, she was writing her seventh book, and her book was called Murder Forgotten. Life imitates art, imitates life. During my career at Triune, my board of directors was very supportive of my writing, and they gave me 3 sabbaticals to finish 3 earlier books. Well, they had been more than generous, and so I wasn't going to request another sabbatical. So in 2018, I was working full time, but I was dying to know how Juliana's story was going to turn out. I don't outline or plan ahead, and so I'm as surprised as the reader when the plot makes a turn or a twist. In fact, my husband and I were out walking one night and talking about the plot, and we came up with a good idea for an ending. But as I wrote, the characters led me away from that ending. So when Vince finished reading the manuscript, he said, "You completely changed it." Yeah, I did. But in a very real sense, so did Juliana and her daughter, Logan, and her assistant, Margot, and everybody else in the book. Since I was working full time, I had to grab stolen moments to write, nights, weekends, even family vacations. Vince and our older daughter, Dustin, and I went to Crescent Beach, Florida for a week that June. And I shoved a table up against the sliding glass door of another balcony to the condo. And every morning, Dustin and Vince graciously allowed me the space to write. By the time Susan and I went to Killer Nashville in August, I had 150 pages. And by December, the first draft was finished. I had never written a book that quickly, but I had to know how it ended. So if I had any advice about the writing process, I would advise writing in such a way that you can be surprised, that you are dying to know what's going to happen next. Because in a very real sense, writing Murder Forgotten was almost as much fun as reading a thriller. Almost. Before I read the ending of chapter 1 for you this evening, I want to say that a book often starts with a single image, a single phrase, a single idea, a single picture in your head. And the image that came to me very early, probably even before I got to Hilton Head, was this picture of a confused, aging writer sitting in a cavernous dining room, wondering where her husband was. So as the book starts, Juliana and her assistant Margot have arrived in Scotland. They flew into Edinburgh, and a driver took them on those twisty Scottish roads in a driving rain to their house on the Fife coastal path between Crail and Anstruther. The reader knows something is wrong, but's not sure what it is, because Juliana is so sure that her husband Connor is going to join them momentarily. So she and Margot have just finished dinner. And here's how the chapter ends. The soup was indeed delicious, but the 2 generous glasses of Cabernet Sauvignon were what Juliana really needed. She felt more relaxed, mellow. So what if she couldn't remember every little detail of every single day? She lived in parallel worlds. There was the workaday world of Sullivan's Island in the warm and shabby beach house where she'd been raised. Her pine paneled office overlooked the side yard of the Atlantic Avenue home, and a screened-in porch perched above the dunes to offer a view of the mighty Atlantic Ocean. She padded barefoot back and forth with her laptop and coffee to write passages in each place, depending on her mood and the mood of the ocean. Next door lived the Fitzgeralds, good friends, and an unending source of hilarity for her and Connor. Meg and Charlie never told their horde of adult children who was visiting when, so there were screaming matches in the driveway and on the exterior decks during long, sodden drinking parties. The workaday world also included book signings and university lectures and launch parties, the exhausting and necessary marketing side of the business that followed every book release. That had been fun in the beginning, but it had grown close to unbearable. Connor had taken on the nuts and bolts, but when it came to facing readers, she was the commodity. She was the celebrity. She was the creator. She was the one they wanted to hear, to see, to touch. What had been exciting at first became grueling and then foreboding. All those people, they wanted her advice, her celebrity, as if her success might somehow rub off on them, her glitter might sprinkle into their lives. And then there was the world inside her head, the world of twisty plots and dark traumas and characters who lived and breathed as surely as those noisy Fitzgeralds next door. But what those characters did and had done to them was the key. How did a genteel Southern lady come up with this stuff? Critics repeatedly asked. Are you not afraid? Connor's friends echoed. She and Connor had laughed out loud when they read Thrillmaster Gillian Flynn's acknowledgement of her husband. What do I say to a man who knows how I think and still sleeps next to me with the lights off? Oh, I sleep with a nightlight, Connor assured his friends, and a sandwich. That was Juliana's cue to add to their shtick. If a little fear keeps him in line, so be it. But that had been when she had clarity between her worlds. When she might lose a few hours deep in thought at her laptop, sure, but a ringing telephone or a doorbell or the barking of her Shiba Inu Annabelle would rouse her. Lately, that clarity had blurred. When she was deep into a plot, it might take her several minutes to surface, not unlike a diver kicking free of the ocean's pull. That's how she felt sometimes when she reemerged on her porch, as if she was gasping for air, surprised, relieved even, to find herself in familiar surroundings. She was always glad if no one was around, because she didn't want anyone to see the time it took for reality to click into place. Parallel worlds, she thought, finishing her second glass of wine. She lived in parallel worlds, one literal, one literary. That meant she had twice as much to remember as most people. No wonder some of the details got lost. Totally understandable. Juliana glanced around the dining room and found that she was alone. But there was an empty glass and plate across from hers. Margot, she remembered triumphantly. She heard movement in the adjoining kitchen, and Margot returned, hoisting a nearly empty bottle of wine. Want the last few sips? She asked. No, you go ahead, Juliana replied. I think I'll go on to bed. I'm beat. I won't be far behind you. Margot, what day is Connor coming? I know you've told me, but I'm rather hopeless with times and dates. She smiled. As you well know. Margot looked stricken. Juliana felt dread rush into the pit of her stomach, but she had no idea why. She waited for her assistant to speak. Margot, she repeated. Juliana, honey, we've talked about this. Connor's not coming. So that's the end of chapter 1. And that's the setup. Connor is dead. Could Juliana, deep into her wanderings and her confusion and her own devious plots, have killed him? I hope I haven't given too much away. My family is notorious for ruining the endings for each other. At Christmas dinner back in 2016, my brother commented on the fact that he didn't like who the murderer was in The Cantaloupe Thief. And my son Taylor said, thanks a lot, Uncle Rick. I was just getting ready to read it. The next year, Vince and Taylor and I were on a train in Eastern Europe. And Vince finished up the cover story and thinking Taylor was asleep, slammed it down on the cushion and said, I can't believe it was. Taylor opened one eye and said, I heard that. As you can see in the part I read, Murder Forgotten is set partially on Sullivan's Island and partially on the eastern coast of Scotland. Why Scotland? Well, my husband Vince is a huge golfer and has gone to Scotland many, many times to play with his friends. But he always said he would like to go and play with the locals. But he'd like for me to come along so he'd have somebody to eat dinner with at night. So during my sabbatical for the Cantaloupe Thief, I said, well, now's a good time. I can write that anywhere. So I wrote a good bit of the Cantaloupe Thief as I sat in a condo in Crail looking out over the North Sea. Now it's a setting in Murder Forgotten as Juliana looks out over the North Sea and writes her novel, Murder Forgotten. Art imitates life, imitates art. In the part I read, you also heard a reference to Juliana's Shiba Inu, Annabelle. A Shiba is a Japanese breed, a cousin to the Akita. In Japanese, it literally means little dog. In English, it means insane dog that makes the neighbors hate you. Shibas look a lot like red foxes. They are very anxious and have a high-pitched squeal that's known as the Shiba scream. They attack small children and other animals, from birds to squirrels to St. Bernards. They have no fear. They have no manners. Annabelle plays a big part in Juliana's life and in the book. Well, I adapted her behavior from our Shiba, Annabelle, who died this fall at age 14. I won't say we owned Annabelle. She allowed us to live in the same house with her. Murder Forgotten is dedicated to the real Annabelle, who ensured I had no visitors during the writing of this book. Life imitates art, imitates life. Murder Forgotten took twice as long to wend its way through publication as it took to write it. But you now have it in your hands, or you can by going to my website, debrichardsonmoore.com, or to the library, or to a bookstore. And I hope you enjoy reading this story as much as I enjoyed writing it. Thank you, and I'll now welcome any questions.
May I have a question, Miss?
Joseph?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Miss Moore, that very good thing. I'm an aspiring mystery writer. I've written a book a couple of years ago, and every now and then I've been taking the time to edit it. But I like to ask, is it possible to get published and find an editor?
Oh, have you sent it out to agents?
I haven't, Miss.
That's generally the first step. Is you can go to a bookstore or the library and find books that you like or that are most like your genre. And if you'll flip to the acknowledgement page, the writers almost always acknowledge their agent. And then you can start, and then you go to each agent, you look on their website for what they require, because each one will require something different as far as, you know, synopsis, so forth. And then you start sending it off. Agents serve as gatekeepers. Now there are very few publishers who will accept a, I don't have an agent, but I just so happened that my first publisher took direct queries from authors, and there are still some out there who do. And you can, same thing, go on their website, find out how to query them, and ask if they would like to take a look at it.
Okay. So is it that like a better alternative? Is that a good idea, doing that, or trying to self-publish on something like Amazon?
Ooh, you will hear all kinds of different opinions on that. Because today, back when I used to write for the newspaper, and back in the 80s, 90s, self-publishing, vanity press was kind of a bad word. and we wouldn't even write stories if things were self-published. That has completely changed. And you've got a lot of authors who have worked for publishers and published and now are self-publishing because they can keep so much more of the money, because online they can do a lot of the marketing. So it is really, that is a very viable thing to do if that's the way you want to go.
Well, I understand. It's mainly because like I think I'm ready to publish or to self-publish on something like Amazon, but I just need like a editor or like a final opinion, you know?
Right, I do. You might try talking to Jill Hendricks at Fiction Addiction. They have a it's a bookstore in town, but they have a publication arm, and she can help steer you to find either an editor or try to think through with you. Do you want to self-publish? Do you want to try to go to a publisher?
Could you give me the name, please?
Jill Hendricks. She's the owner of Fiction Addiction.
All right, Fiction Addiction.
That's a little bookstore right behind Haywood Mall.
All right.
She just knows a whole lot about the whole industry.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your question, Joseph.
No problem.
All right. Who else has a question for Deb? Feel free to unmute or ask in the chat. Okay, we've got one. I'll go ahead and ask. In a mystery novel, how do you balance providing the reader with useful clues without giving it all away to the reader too early? Was there ever a point in writing a book where you worried that a hint was too obvious?
Oh, yes. And so what you usually have to do is you have to go back because there was one of my books, I don't think I knew until halfway through who the murder was going to be. And so then you have to go back and plant clues and make sure that you didn't broadcast it too broadly. So yeah, it's just and that's also a good thing to ask your writers group, because I recommend anybody be using fellow writers as you go along, and they can tell you, oh yeah, that was way obvious, or or I had no idea who it was. And so that's very helpful.
Great. Okay, another one's popped up. Oh,
I see it.
Okay.
Do you have any favorite authors? It disappeared. Who? Yeah. Okay, but I think it's got, yeah, absolutely. And I've got a stack of them down here. In the let's see, Tana French, Lisa Gardner, Harlan Coben. There's a husband and wife team who are writing under Nikki French, which is the one I've been reading out by the pool all day today. And Gillian Flynn, I think, is just a master. But then locally, we've got a lot of strong writers locally. Paulette Alden. I started reading Paulette way back when she was living in Minnesota as a creative writing professor at the University of Minnesota. And her books are just lovely. And that she's someone who published with a publisher and now is self-publishing. But yeah, I just finished Mindy Friddle's second book, Secret Keepers. And she's local, and that was very good. Yeah, just I read pretty broadly, but I'm a sucker for thrillers. Yeah, I see there's a 7 on the chat, Rachel. Does that mean there's 7 questions?
7 new things that you haven't seen yet, but I don't see any new questions that you haven't already answered yet.
Oh, okay.
But we've got one that was submitted ahead of time. Could you elaborate a bit more on your process in writing a book in a series, such as Brannigan Powers novels? How was that different from the way you wrote your standalone book?
Ooh, God, that's a great question. Well, each book in a series, for one thing, has to stand alone. And the trick is how much in book 2, something has happened in Brannigan's family that is huge, and sort of needs to be explained. But if you explain too much, it gives away, and somebody couldn't go back and enjoy book 1. So it's a tightrope, and you're just, like I say, there again, I looked, my writers group helped me. I said, okay, does this make sense? Is this, giving too much away? And they would kind of help me do that. But what is really, I loved writing a series and hope to return to her someday, is that, you've already got that setting, you've got a lot of the characters, and you can then concentrate more on, do you want to pull in any new characters, what the plot is. Because right now I'm writing a standalone, and I realized, okay, how difficult that is to create this whole new world. And when you're doing a series, you don't have to do that. You've already got it.
Thank you. All right. Did somebody unmute themselves? They want to ask a question? No? Feel free to hop on. I see a few people have unmuted. Go ahead and ask your question if you're ready. Okay, here's a question that's popped in. You mentioned that this one went a lot faster, writing this one. Did you see that happened with all of the books you've written, that each time it got faster and faster, or was this one just special in that way?
Oh, now this one was special, just because I was just so interested, and I honestly didn't know what was going to happen, and I was just so I cared a lot about it. The hardest one for me to write, oddly, was The Weight of Mercy, because it was a memoir. Of course, it was my first one too, so I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do it, but that was painful, because that had been a very painful period of my life, and having to go back and revisit that just wasn't a fun process. But once I got through it, that helped me to know, okay, I can finish a book now, because you've probably heard me say before, the hardest thing is fighting your inner critic, because the whole time you're writing, that inner critic is in your head saying, what are you doing? This is so boring. Nobody wants to read this. Why are you wasting your time? And you've got to fight her off. And so just having a book out, I can do that. It may not feel like it today, while I'm trying to write something different, but I know I can do it. And that gives you a good deal of power and not enthusiasm is not the right word, but it gives you a little, you can do it. You've done it before. However, that never goes away, because I am really stuck on what I'm writing now. I got about 12 or 13 chapters in, and I really like it, but I was struggling. And so I came down here, and I've started a new one that I hope will be set in Key West, and will just be a fast, maybe to get me writing again. So I hate to say that, but it really never gets easier. For some reason, Murder Forgotten was easy and fun, but lightning has not striking twice on that.
Well, at least you were honest.
Yeah, much as I hate to admit it.
All right, a question has popped up in the chat. Does your ministry experience play a part in how you write your stories?
Yeah, I think so, because I am always aware of sort of the the presence in our lives now of people I probably did not notice very much before I went to Triune. Is there, you know, even workmen, this sounds ridiculous, but like when workmen come into your home now, I'm very aware because people at Triune did those kinds of jobs, you know, appliance delivery, carpet laying, and tree cutting. And so I'm just very aware of, this is somebody I could have been dealing with on a whole nother plane 6 months ago. And I'm just intrigued by people on the margins. And so yeah, a lot of times I feel like those will, of course, those were totally in the Brannigan Power series, because she had a homeless man, Malachi, who helped her solve those mysteries, because people didn't see him, didn't hear him. He kind of glided through their town invisible. And that was the whole point. So of course they were, you know, that was huge in those books. But yeah, I mean, even when I'm down here, I'm constantly looking and seeing people who very clearly are homeless. And so yeah, I think my ministry, it just was such an enriching part of my life, and I don't think that will ever leave me, and I don't want it to.
Wonderful. All right. Would anyone else like to unmute themselves and ask a question? Or again, of course, if you're camera shy, pop it in the chat. Okay, Susan, you're unmuted. Did you want to ask a question?
No, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Hey, Susan.
Hey.
Yeah, I see some friends' names out there.
All right, looks like we've got another question. How do you stay motivated when projects grow challenging?
Oh boy, the $64,000 question. Boy, I think you have to just allow yourself a little grace. Go for a walk, go out to dinner, go to a concert. You know, that possibly, you know, I'm torn, because I do believe there's a discipline. And as one of my friends used to say, you know, just button the chair time. But at some point, I think writing might reflect that. If it's just a chore and you are just absolutely gutting it out. So I don't think there's wrong with going out and try, you know, talking to people and listening and just letting other ideas and life help you out a little bit. But that's a real challenge, isn't it? Because what's just being lazy and what's
It's a balance.
yeah.
All right, the next question we've got is, when you're working on a book, what does your writing schedule look like?
I do best in the morning. I think all of us have different times of the day when our energy is best. And mine is definitely in the morning. And so what I fight off is email and reading the New York Times and the Greenville News, you know, because I can get sucked down those rabbit trails. So, but I'll try to allow myself maybe 30 minutes to look over the paper and write in the morning. And then break, you know, go through and break after lunch. And then, so that's it. Those morning hours from say 9 to 1 are my best. And then in the afternoon, you could do more chore kind of things, either, you know, Facebook or, you know, just whatever you need to do with marketing and that kind of stuff.
That's great. Okay, here's another question. How are you affected by reviews of your books, especially for future books?
Oh, review, I have been really lucky that any reviews, you know, in newspapers and all have been good, you know, just fine and very, very, yeah, that, no, you know, and I think what happens is I think you have to be a sort of a big name before people start taking aim at you and giving you the real bad reviews. You know, that they may not review a book, but they're not just going to pick some, you know, unknown person, and I don't think and pile on. Now I have had some ugly comments in um you know, just Amazon or not, and I don't mean ugly. It's just they haven't liked the book, you know, or you know, something. But and that's fine. That's part of it, because if you you have got to be, you can, that's, you cannot have thin skin and do this, because you know, getting turned down by agents over and over and over and over, that takes a lot. You've got to almost remove it from your personal. It's that, you know, they're not turning me down. They don't know me. That this book is not what they're interested in promoting. So, but yeah, uh, uh, but yeah, reviews, they're wonderful and they're lovely, and yeah, it just and sometimes they're unexpected. I had a couple of this time around from a lot of bloggers picked up on it, and in a group called Love Reading, a big website in the UK, was very positive about it. And so yeah, reviews have, knock on wood, have been very kind.
That's wonderful. Yeah, the tough skin message we've heard from some of the other authors, like at the local author expo. We had one author who told us that I think she got 60 or 70 rejections from literary agents before she ever got picked up. So yes, that's excellent advice. Develop a tough
Yeah.
skin.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, here's one question. What's your process for creating new characters? Are you inspired by people around you?
Yes. Yeah, that's, boy, and it's almost I've heard people do this in different ways, and a lot of writers will have a character fully formed in their mind, maybe even using note cards before they ever start writing it. I'm kind of the opposite. I may start with their place in the plot and then go back and later and start filling in more detail. I will tell you this though, one of the things I had just started on, I was thinking of writing a book about a group of teenagers who come to Key West on spring break, and one of them gets kidnapped, and the others have covered with their chaperone for a while, thinking she was going with a boyfriend, and so they lost precious days and so forth. And so then I started thinking, I had my names and, you know, some of that, I was thinking about this character, and then I started thinking, okay, am I really going to be able to pull off writing about 17-year-olds? You know, it's been a long time. Not only since I was 17, it's been a long time since I had a 17-year-old in the house. So I started to, just today, as a matter of fact, I said, okay, what about if I make those 4 people the Key West Murder Club? And it's a group of murder mystery writers who have come to Key West, because most people here aren't from here, they're from other places. And so that way I'm writing about women maybe 55 to 65. And isn't that, I think I could bring a richness to them that I might not be able to bring to 17-year-olds. So that, you know, and I don't know. I don't know. You don't know it until you try it. You just really, really what I do more than anything is just jump in and start. And I'm not saying that's the best way by any stretch. When we were at Killer Nashville, the writer, Jeffrey Archer, I believe that's right, was one of the keynote speakers. He did 150-page kind of outlines of his books. And it was more than an outline. It was almost, I don't know, maybe the central part of the story. But then he went back and wrote the book. But I see that doesn't make sense to me. And so I think we have to work in a way that makes sense to us.
Yeah, that does sound like a lot of extra work.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, Mary Adkins, who spoke for us last week, also mentioned that she doesn't do an outline. She lets the story take place just like you were doing with this one.
Yeah.
So,
well, in 27 years of working for the Greenville News, my editors never did convince me to outline. Believe me, they suggested it many times, but I never did it. And and I don't do it now.
that does tie in nicely with another question. You mentioned your experience as a minister affecting your writing style. How did your experience as a newspaper reporter affect your writing or character development?
Yeah, I think most of us who've been journalists first are very concise in our storytelling. As a matter of fact, somebody down here, I'm getting ready to go to the Hemingway house this week, and another author was talking about him and talking just about how his writing was the tip of the iceberg because he had been a journalist first and just so concise. And I'm certainly not comparing myself to Hemingway, but I do think we journalists are used to telling the story, getting in and getting out. And if anything, sometimes that can be a drawback because I probably don't describe or scenery or, a lot of things as much as perhaps I should, because I'm just kind of like, okay, what's the point here? What's the point here? What's the point here? But definitely affects it because I don't think you can do something for 27 years and then not have it affect you.
Right, absolutely. Right. Just a reminder, you can unmute yourself and jump in at any time to ask a question, or you can pop it in the chat box if you prefer. Okay, one question we've received is, where is your favorite place to write?
I have a sunroom that at home, and it's got 5 windows with no curtains, and it's got wicker furniture everywhere, and then all over the walls are beach scenes from places we've been, paintings that I've gotten like Key West, Turks and Caicos, some things from our Triune artist. It's just a real colorful, cheerful room, and that's where I'll write.
That sounds lovely. Just like your condo in Scotland. That also sounded lovely, looking over the sea and getting
yeah. Because I found that really it makes a difference. When we first built our house, I had a desk up in a room, what we call bonus rooms in those days, and there was no window there, and I could not drag myself up there to write. I just couldn't do it. And so finally, I don't know what, but it's, I had the sunroom decorated as a sunroom. And then at some point I moved out a chair and came and put my desk in there. And it was night and day of my willingness to go in there and work.
That's great advice. Make the environment work for you.
Yeah, well, and other people might not be that way. But boy, I needed it.
Yeah. Right. Looks like a couple people have unmuted themselves. Did you want to ask a question? Hop on in.
Yes, thank you. I have enjoyed your writing since you were at the Greenville News.
Thank you, Laurie.
Always appreciated it. Do you also, like Juliana, do you consider that you have a literary life and a literal life as well.
Um, oh, well, no, that's funny. No, I've never really thought of it like that with her, because hers was confusion. But I have to admit, yeah, there are times, especially if I'm walking or if yeah, that I have just been so thinking so hard about, especially Brannigan and Northeast Georgia and all of that, that my husband will say something and I'll be, be kind of startled back into the, oh, I'm not really there in Northeast Georgia. Yeah. So yeah, I guess so. I guess so. And that's a great thing. That's when usually a book is going well, when you live there for a while, that you're in your head, you have you kind of come to and you realize, okay, I have been living there.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. Now, I know you mentioned earlier, this is another question, that you pretended to attend this one conference, but one question that's come up is, do you have any advice for new writers on finding writing conferences and how to make the most of conferences they attend?
Oh man, see, I don't know. I don't know if that's I don't even know if they're worth it. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to attend a Zoom conference with a writer through Sisters in Crime, which I'm a member of. On that, should we be going to writers' conferences? Because I spent about $1,000 at Killer Nashville, and I did not come away with an agent, or the agent that read my 50 pages was very affirming while I was there, and she said, this is one of the most interesting submissions I've had here. Please, get in touch when it's finished. And so when it was finished 5 months later, I tried, and she never answered the first email. So to this day, I don't know what happened. If I just don't know what happened, because she didn't have to say that. She wasn't the kind who was, I don't think she was just trying to be nice. But I have no, I mean, I don't even know if she went out of business or something. Just so. So anyway, I didn't feel like I got anything out of it, and I don't know if that was just me, that I didn't take advantage of everything there, or I just don't know.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times, that you really have to balance whether it's worth it.
Yeah.
And you don't always make connections, even though that's what you're hoping to do.
Yeah, and I am sure there, for every person that says that, there's somebody who made a great connection and got an agent and got published. One thing is, I'm not a real good schmoozer, and I didn't, the idea of going up to people at bar at night and trying to that just kind of made my blood run cold.
Yeah, definitely determine your personality style, I think, before going to those events. Yeah. So we've got time for a couple more questions. If anyone wants to unmute themselves, now is the time to do it. I'll ask one that's come in through the chat. What do you think is the most important skill for a writer to develop?
Oh. Wow. I think what our English teachers used to tell me, and I think it holds true, is you have to know the rules before you can break them. That you really need to know spelling and grammar and sentence structure. And then if you decide that your book needs to break those rules, then dialogue or whatever reason, or quotes or italics or whatever, but you need to know the proper form in your language first to be able to do that. And I just think that's important, because you know, people like, or like, you know, when Joseph was talking about getting an editor and all, that is very important because I have read some self-published books, and I'm sure you have too, Rachel, that really never should have made it into print. You know, they needed another few layers of editing and looking at that. They just weren't written correctly or well, or so yeah, I would just say just the you know, and the skill of writing correctly. And I think probably the only way we do that is reading, is, you know, just reading really just long and hard and constantly. For the rhythm. Another helpful thing I find is reading out loud, reading your prose out loud. Even if you're reading it kind of almost out loud in your head, if you know what I mean. There is a rhythm to writing that it is auditory, and you really need to pay attention to that, because I remember when I was at the newspaper, editors who didn't have an ear for language would mess up a story every time if they could not hear the cadence. And your book has a rhythm, and you need to honor it.
Okay, that's great. That ties in really nicely to this last question we got in the chat. How do you handle your character's dialogue? Is it hard to switch from character to character and keep it fresh?
In dialogue, no, to me, dialogue is the easiest part. I struggle. Sometimes I'm afraid I put in too much dialogue, and I try to convey too much of the story through dialogue. And sometimes I have to dial it back a little bit, because to me, I don't know. That's just, I guess, because I'm hearing these people in my head, and that was what some of my writers groups always said was, you know, that the dialogue was strong. But so there again, I think you want your characters talking to you, and and just, like I say, be willing to listen to them. But because that is that, you know, that, I mean, it's just as simple as making a page look more attractive. I think anybody will tell you that just page after page after page of very dense writing is hard for our modern minds, because our attention spans have gotten so bad that dialogue really helps break that up.
Okay, great. We can take one last question if someone wants to unmute themselves.
I have one more final question. Like,
yes,
I've been going over a little bit of the publishing plans, as well as self-publishing and cover editing. What would your advice be to a fledgling writer who's like, I've taken a lot of inspiration from like detective books, Japanese novels, in order to come up with like the length or the style and cadence. But for my book, I'm focusing a little bit more of going procedural and like going through this. Like, how can you manage to put in like a metaphor or like issues that tread a line? Because like, I've been told by some of my guests, like some of the people I've asked to look over some of my books, to like tread carefully on some topics.
I'm sorry, so what's the question?
I was like, how do you manage to like define your topics and manage to convey them like effectively in your book?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm understanding very well. But I would think that if you're having questions about if your book is holding together well,
yes,
that the only thing is to let trusted readers. Now, I would caution you to only use readers, especially in the beginning, who like your genre. Because, but for instance, my husband does not like murder mysteries. So if I ask for his honest opinion, he's going to probably be pretty lukewarm. because he just doesn't like the genre. That's fine, but you need to find somebody who does like your genre and then see if you are hitting it, if you're presenting it well. That's the only thing I can think of, because I know after a time we are not our own best judges.
Oh, I understand. Thank you for that. Because like I'm writing in the style of like a Japanese light novel. Well, and like I know a person who was in anime club that read like a little bit of my thing. I just wanted to make sure that I'm trying to find like readers to like sort of see if the cadence and the flow is going well, because I'm trying to work on like the grammar, like the story structure, but I just want to make sure like the content is good.
Well, there are some people in Greenville, who, you know, through Emrys, who's sponsoring this tonight. A lot of writers and editors working through Emrys that you may want to contact. Just go on that website, www.emrys.com, I think.
1 second.
And yeah, and because they have a Facebook page and everything, and find writers who are, or you know, or readers even who like your genre.
And I've put the link to Emrys in the chat, so you can grab that link. All right, thank you so much for everyone for your questions. Many thanks to Deb for sharing her time and extensive talents with us tonight. We so appreciate you. We are so lucky to live here with such talented local authors.
Oh, I thank y'all. Believe me, if y'all weren't interested, we wouldn't be doing it. Thank you.
So this was a treat. And of course, another thank you to our sponsors, the Friends of the Library in Emrys. And don't forget to register for our other 2 Meet the Author events coming up. Gary Jackson will be coming to us next week. He'll be doing a reading, just like Deb did tonight on his work, but also giving a bit of a talk as well. And you have your chance to do live Q&A with him. And then later in February, Catherine Smith will be talking about her forthcoming book, Baptist and Bootleggers. So you don't want to miss those. And of course, please do sign up for your winter reading challenge, because going to these events helps you complete them. And of course, as always, please do follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and also sign up for our e-newsletter so you don't miss any more of these amazing events. So thank you all for your time, and have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Deb.
Thank you.